In the 1980s, the Boston comedy landscape was thriving. Stand-up acts Louis C.K., Dennis Leary, Lenny Clark, Janeane Garofalo, and many others took the stage at clubs like the Comedy Connection, the Ding Ho, and the Comedy Studio to refine their acts. By the time the late 90s rolled around, the clubs had gone under and Boston was no longer comedy's hotspot. Today we speak with Chet Harding, the founder of Laugh Boston and Improv Asylum, who's bringing back the laughter to Boston.
Welcome to this edition of BUTV 10's One-on-One. I'm Jessie Gant, and today we have Chet Harding, owner of Laugh Boston and Improv Asylum. Thank you for being here, Chet.
Thanks for having me.
So, you're a Massachusetts native and attended college at Amherst, where you studied political science and environmental economics.
That is true.
How did you end up working in comedy?
Well, I think it has nothing to do with political science or environmental economics. So I got started really in high school, kind of. I wouldn't say the class clown, because that implies that I did stuff to myself to make people laugh, but I was kind of the class comedian, so I'd make people laugh, kind of did imitations of people, did talent shows, things like that. And so when I went to Amherst College, I sort of kept doing that, and one of my friends, there was a local comedy competition happening at UMass, and he basically said, he got on the phone with me and said, either you sign up or I'm going to sign you up. And I figured, when I saw the competition, there was it only had to do about 3 minutes of material, and I thought, I could probably do 3 minutes of material, put that together. So I did, and did well in the competition, and then from there, kind of caught the bug a little bit and started doing it in Boston in the summer.
What are some of your most memorable performances, doing stand-up or comedy?
Probably my most memorable time doing stand-up when I was that young was about a year later. I had started doing it more and putting together more time, and at Mount Holyoke College, which was a nearby college, they hired me to do an hour of stand-up at their campus center. And so that was, up to then, a half an hour to 35 minutes was the most I'd ever done. So it was one of those, where I said, oh, I can do it. I can do an hour.
An hour's a long time.
An hour's a long time.
Yeah.
That night probably gave me as I said, the bug even more of, I love doing this, just because the crowd response and feeling the laughter and all that was great.
Well, in the 1980s, Boston was a haven for comedians, with venues like the Comedy Connection, the Comedy Studio, the Ding Ho. Did you ever perform in any of those or frequent them around that time?
I didn't that much. I mean, the studio is still around, and it's a great venue in Cambridge, and so that's a great place to kind of see up-and-coming people, and it sort of fosters that the up-and-coming people, and even people who are a little more established, they still do that. The Connection I would go to. I think I was too green or too young to perform there yet, so I never performed there, but I certainly went and saw some of the Boston comedy legends perform there, and that certainly gave me a lot of influence as well about what I wanted to do. So,
was there any time, any big name you saw that really showed you anything new, anything exciting?
Well, I met a guy named Don Gavin at the Comedy Riot. He hosted the finals, and he was great, and he still is. I mean, I don't know if you've ever met Don Gavin. He's a Boston comedy legend.
And I had a loan from my bank. Now, in the room, if there are any banking people in the banking industry, I don't mean to offend you directly or indirectly, but go fuck yourself.
A very funny guy, and he went on and kind of hosted the show and got the crowd rolling and laughing, and then came back, and as I went on, I said, geez, I'm a little nervous, and he just said, just don't suck, which I think was great.
Yeah.
But he said it in, if you've ever, and I highly recommend seeing Don Gavin, it's very funny. He did it in a way that made me laugh and then kind of loosen up. He was certainly, in my mind, somebody to aspire to, and to have him sort of joke around and everything was great.
So many famous comedians come from this area: Dennis Leary, Janeane Garofalo, Louis C.K., Conan O'Brien, many, many more. Why do you think Boston has so many comedians come from this area?
They say comedy comes from pain. And no, I think there's something about growing up in the Northeast that we get pretty thick skins, and we also call it as we see it, so we're pretty sarcastic.
It's very true.
We like laughing at ourselves and other people, and kind of call the BS factor a lot on even our friends, and I think even growing up, if you weren't giving your friends a hard time or joking around about them, it kind of meant you didn't care about them. So there's something that kind of fosters from early on, kind of a sense or sensibility. And it's kind of interesting because, from doing comedy for a while, and then from going into improv and sketch comedy and all that, I've had the chance to go out to LA and have meetings and pitch TV shows, and we had a show that almost made it on Comedy Central. And it's kind of interesting how revered Boston is, particularly when you go outside of Boston.
Yeah.
I think the feeling is if you've made it in Boston or if you've done well there, then you must be funny, because I also think audiences in Boston
Are tough.
They're tough.
Yeah.
They love you, but you got to earn their love, and you got to earn it pretty fast.
Well, then, in the late 1990s, the comedy scene in Boston started to close up, venues closed. Do you have any opinion on why that started to happen?
My personal opinion is I think there was a little bit of an oversaturation. I mean, there's a lot of stuff on TV as well, stand-up comedy specials, and it's certainly now making a resurgence, I think, in a very positive way. But I think sort of in the late 80s to late 90s, kind of in that decade, there's just kind of an oversaturation, I think, almost too many clubs, too many people doing it, and in many ways, not enough talent to cover that, if that makes sense. So I feel like
I could see that.
It kind of petered out a little bit, and so you know, I also think certainly the rise of other kinds of comedy as well, sort of I think helped that decline a little bit. So
yeah. So and around this time, you came back to Boston. You had been living in Chicago and performing at Second City, which is one of the best improv spots in the U.S. And you opened Improv Asylum. Did you imagine you would be doing that?
It was certainly a lifelong dream of mine to do. But it was also one of those where you think, well, I don't know if this is really going to, you know, will I be able to do this or not? So as I left Chicago, it was kind of interesting because I'd done stand-up comedy in Boston for a long time, but hadn't done really improv or sketch comedy. And so I asked at Second City, do you know anybody in Boston? And just fortunately, my now business partner, we've been business partners for almost 20 years, he had called Second City about a week prior just asking about how they got started and because he was interested in doing it in Boston. So they pointed me in his direction. And I like to say we were kind of young enough and smart enough and stupid enough all at the same time to take out a small business loan and form a company and start it off.
It's very successful. And now, following that success, you've opened Laugh Boston,
Yes.
which is a 300-seat venue. You opened in 2013.
Yep.
How is that going?
It's going great. So, like you said, with a lot of the clubs closing down, particularly when the Comedy Connection left the city, and I should say this, he didn't really leave the city as much. He moved to the Wilbur. So the Wilbur is where he programs his acts. And those are big acts. So it's great comedy there. But it sort of left a void, we felt, in the city of an act that can fill 300, 400 seats somewhere in there, which the Comedy Connection used to do. And so we really felt like both my business partner and I got our start in stand-up comedy. We love stand-up comedy. And we know that there's a great talent all throughout the country, and certainly here in Boston too. And felt with the Connection leaving, there just became this void at that level of a club. There are some smaller clubs, but at that level, there's a void. And in Improv Asylum, we also do a lot of corporate work too. And so this location came up in the Seaport District, right near the convention center. We thought the blending of all that together over there's nothing this size.
Definitely.
It's right where businesses are for the other side of stuff that we do. We just felt like it was worth trying to bring it back.
Great. And are there any comedy acts coming up, new people we should keep our eyes open for?
No, we've decided to go into jazz.
Okay.
No, I'm kidding.
All right.
Yeah, we do have a lot coming up. So Colin Jost just performed there last month. We have Marilyn Rice-Cub, who was on 24, not in a really comedic role, but before that she was on Mr. Show. She's very, very funny. Nikki Glazer's coming up. She's got her own show on Comedy Central now. It's very funny. So people like that. John Caparillo is coming up.
Yeah, a lot of local talent too. I was able
a lot of local talent.
I was able to see Corey Rodriguez. He was hilarious.
Corey is hilarious, and that's one of the reasons why we love doing it as well. So, you know, on Wednesday nights we tend to feature a lot of local stand-up comedians, but also throughout the weekend we do too. So there's sort of in most comedy shows there's a host who will be a local person, and then a feature, and that we also tend to do local, and then the national kind of headline act. So it's great to see guys like Corey, Mike Whitman, Lamont Price, Will Noonan. They're really these very, very talented people that they will become household names. Or most of them I think will be. And it's kind of nice to see them being fostered at Laugh Boston.
Yes, well, thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, thanks.
And you can find new comedy acts every week at Laugh Boston. Tickets and showtimes can be found on their website, laughboston.com. And that's all for this edition of BUTV 10's 101.